Good evening.
Hello.
Hello.
The second Chris Huntley is actually my computer with Dramatica on it. Since the speakers went out on that computer, my second that model, I had gotten a new one and they crapped out on that one too.
No, no.
Yeah. Now Jim's not going to be able to join us because he's at well, I don't know, it's not a PTA meeting, but some award ceremony for his kid. Um, so
Oh,
High school
watching
gym.
from high school gym.
yes, high school gym. Oh, yes, there he is. Well, we just
Ah,
call it high school gym.
yeah.
Um, and so uh Jim, do we have sharing on? Well, let me try. I mean, that'll make it really easy for me to. Nope, we need to have the sharing turned on. Uh, is it on? No, not yet. Just open up the chat. All right, come on. So how's everybody doing otherwise? I've got a computer in my lap and I've got
Good.
in front of probably turn off my camera when I turn on the Dramatica one.
Oh, okay. Let's see, recording. Should be recording,
I think I'm muted.
but well.
Yes, we're all recording, but we actually need to be able to, I need to share. So if I can't share, then we can't see the software. Anyway.
We'll just visualize it.
Right.
And I can always put the chart up there, so you know we can at least see the details.
Yeah, that'll really go well.
Yeah.
Especially since we have it blurring out everything except for people. Something just dinged. I don't know where that was. Okay. Is Jim, if you're online, please make it so we can share? Nope, still not on. Sharing is caring.
And remember, Jim, there's two Chris's.
Yeah, I'll just send him a notice message. So tonight we're going to be doing the holdovers. Had everybody seen it beforehand, or is this the first time for seeing the movie?
I'd seen it once before.
It was my first time watching it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very entertaining. And it's not. Okay. There we're good. So let me welcome. We're going to start doing an analysis, a Dramatica analysis of the holdovers. And I will bring up Dramatica. I'm going to turn off this camera and turn on my sharing. All right. So yes, we can see it because I can see it on my computer. All right, good. Yay. Okay, so where I'll put this so I can get good sound, decent sound. First thing we want to do is identify the four through lines. And we'll start with the big picture, the overall story or the objective story. Let me just swap out some language here, use some newer terms. All right, so I have put the synopsis from IMDb, the little short synopsis up there. It says in 1970, a curmudgeonly history teacher at a New England boarding school remains on campus during Christmas break to supervise Holdovers students at the end, and ends up forming an unlikely bond with a brainy but damaged troublemaker. All right. So, and I have the four principal characters. Paul Hunnam, that's the teacher. Angus Tully, that's the student. Mary Lamb, she's the cook, and Lydia Crane is the principal's assistant or secretary.
I'm not sure if she's a faculty member or administrator or what, but
she seems to be in administration. She's always in the principal or whatever
the headmaster. Now that
headmaster's
the I don't know his name, but the headmaster is a very important character, I think, in the overall story.
Okay. I'll just put headmaster. I mean, I think was he in two scenes?
Yeah, but he's pretty crucial to the plot.
Right, so, right. But I usually try to put the ones in the ones I list here, ones that are going to be potential for the main or influence character. The other ones, we don't really need to think of them by their name, just by their function. So,
right.
So, I mean, there are lots of characters. It's just these, anyway, I have headmasters in there. So what is the overall story portion of this? What's it about?
Supervising the held over students, well, boarding school students, supervising, yeah, without anyone getting in trouble,
unwillingly being held over at school over the holidays. Isn't that's really the willingness is a really huge part of it. Nobody is there except maybe Mary, but even then she's only there for really kind of sad and disturbing reasons.
Yeah.
I mean, she'd rather be with her sister, but she's, there because of her son.
Well, that's I wanted to click a little bit longer. It won't look good on my head, but it will look on.
Yeah. Somebody needs to mute.
Yeah.
Oh, I was gonna say I didn't quite catch that.
Can you believe I got fired?
Yeah, I think somebody. Yeah.
It's okay, not a problem. Happens to the best of us and the worst of it. Okay, so let's go on to the main character, identify the main character. So who's the character through whose eyes the audience experiences the story in this film? Who's the I character? Who's are we supposed to be saying?
Paul Hunnam.
Okay.
I think it's Paul.
Everybody good with that, or okay? All right. Pardon? I wasn't sure if that was.
I think someone's on the phone and doesn't realize they're not muted.
Oh, okay. All right. How about influence character? Angus.
Angus.
Okay.
Yeah.
And all good with that? All right, excellent. Wow, that was the fastest I think we've ever done that,
Mm.
or at least recently. And what about the nature of the relationship?
Paul and Angus.
Well, yeah, between Paul and Angus, but they're not what kind of a relationship is it? It's not a Paul and Angus
Like a
relationship.
mentorship, friendship.
Yeah, like reluctant mentorship.
Well,
Right.
it's a teacher-student relationship, right?
Right, and they don't like that, but they don't like each other. So
Right. Well, I mean, that's the nature of a relationship. Is there's problems in the relationship, but it's because one's a teacher and one's a student, and
Mhm.
and
Is it teacher
And-
student over the holidays when they don't fit into those roles, when he's not the he's like not officially, he's the teacher but not, and he's the student but not.
well, sure, but I think if you want to distill it down, somebody says, okay, what's your relationship? Well, I'm a teacher and he's my student, and we've got that. That's the nature of the relationship. We're not trying to describe the through line so much as just what is it, so that we have I don't want to say a label. The overall story, we want to kind of give it a little more depth, but we're not going into describing the problem in each of the through lines. So we don't say what Paul's problem is or what Angus's problem is in this window. We're just trying to identify it, sort of label it so that we have something to hold on to when we start talking about each of those through lines in this analysis. So I think if we identify them, yeah, and I think this fact it's a teacher, not a mentor, because I don't think he's a mentor. I mean, it turns out to sort of be, but then who's teaching whom? One of those sort of weird things. So, but it
Well-
definitely, the conflict is that one has ostensibly control over the other, or is responsibility for the other, right?
authority over the other. Yeah.
Authority, yeah. I mean, that's what's in question and what's being pushed and pulled and tugged, and a lot of
Literally.
yes, exactly. Okay, so let's go from there and go to the story engine, and let's answer some of the questions that we have that are about this, the dynamics that control this. I'm going to start with the main character resolve. So the choice is, does the main character change his personal worldview over the course of the story, or does he hold steadfast to his way of seeing the world or dealing with the world?
He changes his worldview. I think we see that in the beginning. He abhors lying, especially on behalf of a student. And at the end, he willingly does so to benefit the student.
Okay.
The moment of change, I think, is in the conversation with the parents, with Angus's mother and stepfather, and yes, that it is the opposite of what he would have done at the beginning. And you also see, and at the beginning, he's always hurling insults at the students. He's calling them names,
Yeah, he sees them as Philistines, and
and then instead of hurling them at the students, he's hurling them at the headmaster at the very end. So, so I think he's significantly approaching the world 180 degrees at the end from the beginning.
And is there sort of, what's the proof of that? I mean, yes, he does that, but in terms of, it's the main character influence character. What's sort of the personal way we understand that he, in fact, truly has changed? Professionally, he's behaving differently, but how do we know it on a personal level? I mean, there's a very specific point that they make that is just something that never would have been done before, and now he does it. It's something he says to Angus at the end.
Okay. I'm not. Yeah, I'd have to go back and
He-
recall it.
He points out which eye is the real eye.
Okay.
This is something that he kind of prides himself in never revealing that personal detail to anybody, as a way to sort of keep them off balance. And he now goes out of his way to tell Angus which one it is, even though earlier on he completely didn't, he would not do that.
Mhm.
I mean, literally he was asked directly and he said, he didn't answer. I just thought, and then what's also interesting is that although, that would imply, if he's a change character, that would imply that Angus is a steadfast character. How do we see Angus as a steadfast character? Because he does grow. I mean, they both grow, but Angus, how do we know that he's uh pretty, he's pretty much the same character at the end? When at the beginning you see the teacher is very strong and knows his place, knows everything, and the student is very strong and knows his place. And at the end, the teacher is like, they're kind of, but basically he's moved to the same position as the student, which is, we'll do the best as we can. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but you do the best you can. I was just going to tell you that. It's one of those things where now they're really, really just mirroring exactly the same perspective. And he doesn't even know, Angus doesn't even know if he's going to be able to last, to stay the last year or year and a half that he has, but he's going to try, but he doesn't know if he hasn't really changed. The experience has matured him, and that might be enough to, but it's not like a 180 that Paul Giamatti's character has done, right? So that's kind of why they have that scene. It's to show them, how close, and they really, really just sort of become the same, sharing that exact same worldview at the end there.
Yeah, Angus's argument at the beginning in that, for well, we actually see him in the dormitory first, but at least in the relationship, we first see him in the classroom, and he's, and Paul is, saying you got to read this chapter over the holidays. And Angus's argument is just give us some leeway here, consider us, consider our lives. And I, and I think that's kind of his argument throughout. It's a bumpy road, but consider our lives and our situations. Don't just be, hard-assed about what you require of us. Try,
It's sort of like
consider.
look at us holistically, not just as students.
Yeah, kind of, yeah. Um,
Consider our, our situations, consider everything about us, not just that we're students in your class.
Or rich, stuck up,
Yeah.
privileged students. Yeah.
And
Yes,
he was also testing him at the beginning, and he never stopped testing him. He tested him at the end as well.
right. That's another example of how he's steadfast. Yeah, that's excellent. Okay. How about our main character approach? So doer or beer? Okay. Think of the main. There's a really great example. He tells us right at the beginning when he's told that he has to, he's been given this job. He has to be with the holdovers. He has to hold over for the vacation or the holiday. So what does he say he'd rather be doing?
What does he say?
I'd rather be reading mystery novels.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's just a kind of guy who will settle down and just sort of stay in his head.
Right.
I mean, sure, has been called on it even by Mary calls him on, well, how often do you go out? You don't really go out and do anything. It's just like, even the instance where he needs to find out who started the fight. How does he go about that? He starts describing the detention in detail, with knowing that, he's not doing anything to them. He's not, but he's being very effective at causing inequity in the world, in the outside world around him, for it to change to be the way he wants it. And it works. Eventually one of the kids, can't take it anymore and points out the person who started it.
But what about, and maybe this is just his role as, teacher protagonist, but he, when the holdover period starts, he's like, banging on the thing to get them up early. He's getting them to run outside. He's getting to, he's getting them to do things.
Yes, but he himself is not.
Okay. All right.
I mean, that's the big joke in the middle of it, is that Angus is, when he refuses to follow his directions, and he's making him do things, and spitting his own words back at him about, basically, if you sit, if you sit, you just burn, muscle. You need to do activity, or that's not the wording, but that's basically what it's saying. So his preference, again, this is the main character's preferred way to solve problems. The story can require him to do other things, but the preference is, he seems to be a beer, like a huge beer. Every time there's a conflict, he runs into that guy with the, who is his former classmate at Harvard, and he basically pretends he's another person. He describes this other thing that, he becomes somebody different to prevent this problem. He sure doesn't do anything about it. He doesn't like turn around and walk away or whatever. There's all sorts of things he could have done to try to avoid him, or, it's like, oh, we've got something, and literally walk away, or he solves his personal problem by being whatever he's expecting that the other guy to be satisfactory to him, without creating additional problems down the line. I don't want him telling everybody else, blah, 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 blah. So, I mean,
Jim chatted, he's defined by being a grump, like Scrooge.
Yeah. Okay. So, it works really well too. Yeah. Nobody likes him because he's just this asshole.
But he also, the gift he gives to everybody is a book of meditations.
Right. So he has a crate, he has a whole box of them. So he doesn't even do anything for the gifts. He just grabs something he already has. So there's no physical effort to give a gift to someone. He's already.
Yeah. He gets the cookies, and he just like, oh, okay.
He doesn't even eat them. He doesn't even eat them. It's only when he finally brings them out to Christmas dinner or whatever, that they, oh, look, he looks at them and he shows them. It's like, oh, look, there's a boot. And he tastes it. It's like, you can tell on his face, this is the first time he's actually eaten one of the cookies, and they're not so bad. Okay. So beer. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My favorite scene along that way is when he's instructing them all to run. And so they're running, and he's giving them a lecture on the decay of the body if you don't keep it, and he's standing there.
Yes. Well, that's why I'm saying, the play on that later on, when Angus is forcing him to run after him, and Angus basically repeats that back to him as he is running and huffing and puffing and clearly out of shape. not practicing what he preaches.
They both run very awkwardly.
Well, yes, I don't think either one would.
Both of them are. Anyway.
Okay. Main character problem solving style, linear or holistic? Is he a male problem solver or a male mental sex or female mental sex, or linear thinker, cause and effect, or more holistic?
I'll give you one clue for linear. Okay, so Angus says at one point, my father's dead, and he takes it at face value. Later on, he says, "It's okay, we can go to a cemetery," and of course, he's not. Obviously, he's connecting A to B, but he's not kind of sensing the holistic environment that is eventually revealed. So I do think Angus is more the holistic character in this relationship. So but he's as a teacher, he's looking for cause and effect. He's
Yeah. I mean, I think he's clearly linear, right? Like he doesn't see the bigger picture that Barton wants him to see about passing students who don't deserve to be passed. Like the guy failed, he failed. He doesn't get the grade. So, and
yeah, for
obviously
better or worse. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
the headmaster obviously says you don't understand
you
the
can argue
balance here.
right. You can argue the
How
morality
this
of it.
place
You can
works.
admire his position, but the headmaster is
Sure.
saying consider the whole, and he's
Right.
not.
Okay, I'm going to leave it unchecked. I think it is linear as well, but let's just leave it undone just so that it doesn't limit some other things that we might want to choose. Story driver, action or decision. Do actions drive decisions or decisions drive actions? And how do we know? So look at the key, the inciting event, the closing event, the act turns for these kinds of driver events.
I think it's action. When I was watching it, I asked myself that question, and I thought it was action.
Okay, and give some examples from the film that were
Just the fact that they didn't like, it wasn't a decision. I mean, the decisions emanated from the fact that they were stuck at school. That was a physical situation that set up the objective story.
okay,
that they were the holdovers.
right, but that could have been okay. They've decided to stay there. Their decision to stay there, or the decision to pick Paul Giamatti's character. But think of some of the act turns, because I think those are stronger, they're a lot stronger.
Well, one I think apparently significant act turn is when the one kid's father in the helicopter decides to take the other kids away on their ski trip or whatever, and but the school would only allow them to go if their parents gave permission, and so apparently the parents.
That action led to those decisions. Those decisions would not have been made without that action.
Well, what about the decision?
If the helicopter didn't land, they all would have been there for the whole duration.
What about the decision to go to Boston, though?
Well, what preceded it?
Oh, him.
Mary convincing him, basically.
Okay, so that would make it not a that would make it unclear as to which one is which.
Yeah.
So, but we need a pattern. That's why you can't just look at one instance and say, "Oh, this is how it is." You need to.
I mean, Paul lies at the end. That's a decision for sure.
He wanted to go to the Boston for the
the decision to fire him is actually, I'd say that's what.
Right.
And to keep. I mean, that's the problem. It's some of each, but right, the decision to fire Paul, but to keep Angus in school is kind of the climax it's kind of the
Conclusion.
resolving
No,
incident.
no, that's not the climax. That's the proof.
That's
The climax is the scene the scene in the is basically
Mental hospital.
it's the scene with the parents, and then and the decision, or him getting fired. Whether it's we don't see the decision. See, that's the one thing we don't see the decision part of it.
So, okay,
He gets
but
fired.
if the resolving incident is Paul lying to protect Angus and to basically throw himself under the bus to protect Angus, but he did it in the spur of the moment. He, you know, he wasn't planning to do it. He hadn't decided to do it. It just came out of him.
Right, but
I don't
that's a main character thing, don't you think?
know.
That's
Well,
that's a main character change issue.
yes.
So in the overall story, though, how does that how does that how you know even though he said that, that didn't force anything. The story could have continued on with him as a teacher, right?
Right.
So, but him getting fired definitely changed, resolved the story. I mean, that brought it all to an end. That closed the holdover period, so to speak.
As far as a driver is concerned, is action the same as reaction? Because I
But-
feel like in holdovers, most of the action is things that are happening to them
Yes.
out of their control, and they're reacting to it.
Well, the way I always like to think of it is that actions happen, decisions are made.
Hmm.
And so it could be an action that is, it could be something that's a moment, or it could be something that, is like an activity as opposed to a single moment. Just like you can have a decision or deliberation. Those would both be in the decision side. Another way to look at it is it an external cause or is it an internal cause? I mean, that's another way of thinking.
Well, the way that you're describing it definitely seems like it would be action for this movie.
Right, because what we find, the change of events is that he has been fired. We don't see the firing. We see, after the firing, it's like, well, you brought this on yourself. It's like, yeah, you ask cancer in human form, but that's all post him getting fired, which we didn't see. Which is, I mean, but it is a choice by the story, but we can leave it either way and just see what comes up. I mean, that's the nice thing about this is that
I'm about to leave it open.
Yeah, we don't need to make that choice right up front.
Make the decision.
Or not act.
Right. We'll see what it
Okay, so the story limits. This is what's going to bring the story to a climax. We are either going to run out of time and a time lock, or you're going to run out of options with an option lock. What seems to be what forces that climax at the end of this movie?
Time.
Okay, and now a time lock is either a specific amount of time, and I mean, when I say specific, I mean specific, like a quantity that we can count, or a specific deadline. And by deadline, I mean, like noon on Tuesday.
Yeah, so like the end of the holiday.
Yeah, but when is that? That's not a time lock. How many days is the holiday?
So if they said in the movie, I can't remember.
Yeah, that was like
14
2 weeks.
days.
They said something. They said. But what is interesting is they did, say 7 days into the holdover, or they periodically reminded us at what point of time we were at. So that tends to be a time lock kind of thing.
Right.
But the movie goes beyond the end of the holiday period. But so I could argue either way, to be honest. But if you count it as okay, it's a time lock in that we want to get through this holdover period, this holiday period, without anybody getting in trouble. And that didn't happen because of the incident with the father and the
That, but that,
you know.
that wasn't, I mean, I,
You know what's funny is that it comes to a climax because Angus literally runs out of options.
right. He has been a angry old man for a very long time in a position that he probably shouldn't have for technical reasons, but has, been grandfathered in and has been put up with. And then this particular um, event, this, having to watch these kids over the holiday, um, brings a lot of that into uh, light. And for him, it makes it so that it's no longer tenable. Remember, this is a story. It's not real life.
So
Even
Chris
though all the
is
holdovers, I think that's descriptive of the people. Well, he is a holdover. He's a
right.
holdover from like for 30 years.
He is the holdover. It's
Exactly.
the holdovers in the story, but the irony is he's the holdover.
Yes. And I think that that's so I mean, if it was truly 14 days or whatnot, then once that 14 days were up, the story would feel like it needed to come to a conclusion, but it didn't.
But
Felt like
shouldn't
it felt like it came to a conclusion when the the parents arrived. And that wasn't the first day of back, was it? Unless if it was, then that would have been just perfect timing.
We don't know.
Yeah, I'm not. But it's not the main character that decides this, right? It's the
No, no,
overall story. Yeah, so
but this
Angus
is a,
literally runs out of options. Like Angus is like that was the threat is he's going to go to this Virginia military school, and then he, goes and he sees his dad, and that's it. He ends up with, he literally runs out. I was going to say runs out of time, but it's not a time thing.
well,
It's like he runs
that's
out of any other opportunities. If John, right, the main character, if he didn't lie,
yeah,
then
but you say he doesn't, but it's not Angus's options. There is that for Angus, but this isn't that story.
okay.
It's because
So
it
this has to be seen in terms of the main character.
no, it's the big picture. It's
Okay,
it's the you've got this teacher and these kids that are basically held have to stick around until school starts and everybody comes back from school.
right,
That is the period of time, but it's because it happens over a period of time. Everything happens within time.
right.
What's going to bring it to a climax? Is it going to be just okay, once this time is up, then whatever needs to be worked out gets worked out, or once the conflict the conflicts run out of options of trying to figure out ways to make it work. And I think that seems to be, since you're talking about a teacher who is terribly disliked by absolutely everybody, who's now forced to interact on a very close basis with some of the students and uh, other people who work there. Um, can that survive the period that, until everybody comes back? And the answer is no, it can't, because he is able, well, yes, he's able to, well, actually, it's not about whether or not it can, it's just what brings it to the climax. And the climax is when all of the major events that have been going on in there have been brought to the fore, and now something has to be done about it. That's what the limit does, is it brings it to that point. It's not the outcome. It's, because the outcome, well, look, let's just talk about the outcome for a second. So the outcome, success or failure?
Failure.
Okay, so what do you think the goal is?
Well, that I don't know, but I know the story judgment was good. But I don't think in the objective story, I don't think that, I mean, the 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 I can't put it down to a specific adjective, but the problem that inhabited this world kept going on. The main character found his exit, and the story judgment was good in that regard, but no one in the objective story world changed.
Well, but they won't. Nobody in the in the overall story ever changes. They are
Well, okay.
That is not their purview. But what happens is you set up at the beginning, okay, you need to watch over these students until everybody gets back and keep them safe.
And we don't want anything going wrong. You know, we don't want any trouble. We don't want to hear from any of the parents or donors, you know, and the fact that something did go wrong, and the headmaster always kowtows to the parents, anyone who's rich, and uh and I think, you know, the holdover period was not successful. So yeah, and I agree. It feels like a bittersweet ending. So there is there is kind of a personal triumph there, but it's a personal triumph in the face of a you know, what amounts to the logistical failure.
Okay.
So I'm arguing for failure good as well.
Any other thoughts from anybody else?
Yeah, I guess I'm more confused on what we're judging it against. We're judging it against the plot line of his he had a mission to keep them at school over the holiday and nothing go wrong, or the story of this troubled young person that he managed to have an impact on that person and change him for the better, and that kid had an impact on him and changed him for the better.
Well, why don't we then let's just leave this out alone, and we're going to define our domains, and that'll help us determine what the goal is.
Right.
And then we can more definitively say, okay, this is a success or failure based on it being whatever the goal is. So let's swap out for a sec. Let's go to the theme browser. Pop up to the top. All right. So the first thing we want to do is we want to identify where the through lines align themselves. So we have 4 through lines: main character, influence character, the overall story, and the relationship through line. And one of them will be assigned to one of each of these large, big block of squares. So the yellowish, the reddish, the purplish, and the greenish. There are a couple rules. The main character and the influence character are always going to be in a diagonal relationship, and the overall story and the relationship through line will be in a diagonal. That's called a dynamic pair. So that's probably one of the only rules you need to know about. The other thing is, typically, if the main character is a doer, well, not typically, always. If a main character is a doer, then their domain will be in the external world, and if they're a beer, their domain will be on the internal world. So as a beer, Paul Giamatti's character is going to be likely going to be either seen as in manipulation or fixed attitude. And that's the only one I think that we can define is narrow it down to those two based on the choices we've made so far. The overall story can be anywhere else as long as it's not dynamically opposite the main character's domain. I don't know if that made any sense whatsoever, but
Yeah.
So
I understood.
Alexander Payne and Paul Giamatti automatically scream bad attitude for main character.
I mean,
attitude.
From the very first scene where he's basically bad mouthing all the students and calling them names and everybody thinking, that would make sense. And
But
if that is the case, yeah, the question.
if that's the case, then the objective story world can't be situation.
Correct.
Right.
Now,
Right.
it would
And
imply
that's a
that
good argument that it is a situation.
But I could also argue that Angus is a situation character.
Yeah.
Um,
I think his,
especially when you look at the concerns underneath it, like the future. He's concerned about his future in that, he's afraid of going to that military academy, which
yeah.
means he ends up in Vietnam and suffer the same fate as Mary's son. The past is pretty significant for him. His father, his parents divorce, all the stuff that went on. The present moment is certainly a concern for him, especially when you see him living in the dormitory, and how things are going. Uh, you know, uh, uh, is definitely kind of everything that's happening in the middle. So I think his situationally, he's the one who has the mother who doesn't want to see him because he's his father's son. Okay, it eventually comes out that his mother doesn't want to see him or be with him over the holidays because of who his father is, and that's a fixed situation that is very problematic for him. So I think that is a strong placement there.
Yeah, I agree. I think that was very well stated. All of those were great examples of,
Mhm.
and it's his situation of being, all the issues he's dealing with that really have an impact on or influence on Paul and help him see him as a full human being rather than just a rat student.
And him being a student at that school is his last bastion of freedom. It not only is it a status issue for him because he's seen as being lesser by his his parents, his mother particularly, but also he is, you know, this his placement at this school, it is if it's kind of like I can't I have to stay here. This is something I cannot risk, and yet he constantly risks it because of it's just the way he is.
He's a teenager. That's also part of the situation. At one point, he was saying, I lie, I steal, I'm mean to people, and I don't know why. And my response to that was, well, you're a teenager. So
Right.
that's another part of his impact.
All right. So the reason I would say it's the overall story is not a situation is that being in a situation is like being stuck. Well, within at the first act turn, 3/4 of the people who are stuck there are gone. And then midway through, the rest of them go on a road trip. So it's literally if you're stuck, you really and especially if that's an external state, that means you really are stuck. You're not running around doing all these other things. And I think that would be my argument for why it wouldn't be situation. Because again, I'm thinking about all of the characters, not just a main character or the protagonist or whatever, but all of the characters in the story. None of them seem to be. It starts off with it looking like it's going to be we're all stuck here, but it just doesn't. That's not the way it pans out, and it's not that kind of. I don't think the holdover part, even though it looks like they're physically held over, that's not where they're being. I don't think that's what it's really describing. I think it's a different kind of holdover. So where do we see the relationship between Angus and the student and the teacher? Where's their relationship
which domain would that be? Activity or manipulation, or why? Or psychology?
Manipulation.
Okay, how so?
Well, I mean, because and I agree with with what's been said, right? So it makes sense that the main character's in a fixed attitude, and Angus really is in a situation, and it's really hard to articulate. But what the main conflict between them is how they see the world, like the
Is that
different ways.
is that uniquely theirs? I mean, if you think
The
about where the two of them literally get into conflict is, I mean, the two of them as the teacher student thing. What are they what give some examples from the film of where there is a very big conflict. You have Angus running around and
right. Okay. So that
and
scene.
then he gets hurt. Okay, that's a and that's a definitely the two of them moment. It's a relationship thing. Don't
Mm,
cross that line. You're going to go across the Rubicon. Don't cross the Rubicon, and then he runs. And then we go into the overall story. Uh, the whole business with trying to duck out and get into the
right.
cab, and that's again these are activities.
I mean, the whole shoulder thing creates a huge conflict.
Right.
Right.
These are
No,
all,
that,
it's all
yeah.
this, these activities that particularly that Angus is trying to achieve, trying to do. He has his own personal goal. He wants to go see his father, but he's not telling anybody that's what he wants to do. And I mean, it comes up really early on when he's talking to the other boys about, oh, well, maybe we can get your car and go to Boston. I mean, that's like really early on. Early on, he's dropping those hints at him wanting to go to Boston. But I think what you were describing, though, was not something that was unique to him. That's really, I'd say, the overall story is over in psychology and manipulation. Everybody is dealing with psychological problems, including growing up problems, things, homesickness. The father is in the psych ward, and the
Well,
parent,
and the other father issues too. The one kid who said, "Oh, my father has a helicopter, but
he
I
was
won't cut my
married with
hair.
his
I'm not going
father.
to cut my hair. I'm going to keep my hair long until he caves in."
Right. I mean, it's all
And
and the
then and then the
interaction between
headmaster.
the kid and interaction between the kids, you
Mhm.
know,
Oh
you
yeah.
know,
Right.
him taking the one glove and throwing it in the river, for the little guy, the young guy, because he ratted out on him. And I mean, they're all about all these manipulation issues
Right.
going on, and I mean, it's clearly Paul Giamatti's character is doing that constantly too, you know. But he's probably more of the recipient. Uh, the much more manipulative one is Angus. He is very manipulative. He doesn't tell you what he really wants.
But also look how Paul got roped into doing this because the other teacher who was supposed to stay with the holdovers manipulated his way out of it with
Right.
the lupus story, So here's
A Lucas story that everybody knew was false.
right.
I mean, it was so patently, he knew he was being punished for this other thing, for this giving the bad grade to
Right.
the son.
Exactly. It was on, but here I will say this. I could not pick this myself because I can make a strong argument for either, I mean, yes, you can make a strong argument for the relationship being a manipulation and for the, overall story being an activity and also make an argument for the other way around. I just
Look,
because
but if you
you
look
know,
at all the other characters other than the main and influence character, I think
mhm,
that's what steals it. So Mary and the Lydia, the all the I thought she was coming on to me. I mean, even the peppermint lady,
candy cane lady.
candy cane lady, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's all these things. They're all, if you get the other characters, they're all in trying to get things, people to do things that they want them to do, but they don't want to necessarily hit, be direct about it, which is, basically kind of what manipulation's about. And then it's a whole, and plus the fact I mean, granted, any change story is about growth, but it's about growth in general in terms of as a school, and the kids. But you see the manipulation of Angus's mother, and how she manipulates Angus. It's like, oh well, she tries to make it like, oh, do me a favor, and then when he doesn't give on it, she just tells it, this is basically this is the new reality, live with it. But her approach is to try to manipulate him into wanting her to be have this a vacation, the honeymoon that they didn't have. Or at the end, it's like it's because she's inconvenienced because of her husband has to find a new place. Do you realize how difficult it was for us to find it? It's like, and Paul Giamatti's character basically says, look, okay, but don't take that out on him. He's a good guy. So he falls on his own sword to sort of save Angus and himself, because he's been the biggest holdover the whole time.
And to be honest, I think, Alexander Payne did not write the script, or at least he wasn't credited for it. But I think the reason he wanted to direct it is because it is a psychology story, not because it's a physics or activity story.
Right.
I think it's the stamp of the filmmaker.
Well, it's, the thing we're attracted to. We each have, a story that we are attracted to. Maybe a couple, but usually there's one that's a defining, sort of personality defining one, an area that you're exploring to try to work out. And that's why you can find particularly filmmakers who are more auteur. They're really trying to work shit out.
Yeah, you look at his body of work, yeah.
You look like he's telling the father story over and over and over.
Over and over and over and over. Right. Which is fine because it makes great art.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that tortured, motivation that gives the motivation for exploring it in such, interesting and deep ways. And it's, clearly it's sort of, he's getting paid to sort of for therapy, doing his therapy, and we're all watching.
Yeah.
And enjoying it. So, I mean, I think that's probably where the domains are. I definitely think our main character here is here.
Well, and part of this is also we pick the main character in Fixed Attitude. We pick manipulation of the overall story. That would predict the main character growth as stop instead of start. And
he's absolutely a stop character.
Chip on his shoulder, Yeah.
Yeah, he is his own worst enemy, I swear. That's the big difference between a stop and a start change character. A stop character is someone who is their own worst enemy. Either you can look at it as a chip on the shoulder, or just someone who constantly is creating trouble for themselves and needs to learn how to hold back. And a start character is someone who is withholding, and that's what's causing the conflict, and they need to learn to step up. And it's definitely, Paul Giamatti does not seem to have a problem stepping in. He needs to learn how to hold back. In fact, that's what he does.
Still there, Chris?
Pardon me?
Okay, yeah. I just want to make sure you're still there.
I am here. Sorry, I got a text, and Jim wanted to make sure it was still going because I think he had to. I think his phone was running out of juice.
Yeah, he signed off. Yeah.
Right. He just wanted to make sure because he wanted to sign it over to me, and he wanted to make sure, is it still going?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So now we want to go from the domains to the concerns. And the way this works, it's pretty straightforward, and I'll explain it like I do normally, is that if you pick any one domain in any of the through lines, I mean, not any concern in any one of the through lines, then it picks actually all of them that are in the same quadrant position. So picking the upper left one, like the past, that would also pick understanding, memories, and developing a plan. They're all the same thing, but seen through different lenses. So that's why when you pick one, you sort of pick them all. So the question is, does this story deal with the past, understanding, memories, and developing a plan? And again, what we're doing is we're looking at the concern, which is going to be through the entire story, not just explored in one act. Um, the uh, the next one would be progress, or how things are changing, doing, impulsive responses, and playing a role. The present, gathering information, contemplation, and conceiving an idea. Or the future, obtaining, innermost desires, and changing one's nature. So one of those four patterns is going to describe the concerns for this story. Anybody have a?
I mean, the strongest one to me was the influence character and concern with the future. And it's twofold. It's the military school and what's going to happen to him if he can't stay at Barton. But also, I think even stronger is, ending up like his father, um, which is sort of the grave concern he has, uh, that he's masking and, scared about the whole time, pretty much.
Okay. Well, that would put Paul Giamatti's character into innermost desires, and the relationship in obtaining, and the overall story in changing one's nature. Do you have anybody have any thoughts about what those might be in that arrangement? Well, if you look at, I mean, to me, changing one's nature, generally speaking, and you've got a school and
Coming of age,
maturing and coming of age and all that stuff. It's pretty easy. But I think if you look at below that, responsibility, commitment, rationalization, obligation,
that's better, yeah.
those are a lot stronger to me in terms of what I see in the overall story.
Yeah.
But and the same thing if you look over for Paul Giamatti's character, closure, denial, hope, dream. And then in the relationship through line, you definitely have attitude and approach, self-interest and morality. I think those are stronger than obtaining. Although, again, obtaining is not only gain, but also loss. So I'm not sure exactly how obtaining would be defined in this particular instance. It's not jumping out at me. The thematics in this story are a lot stronger to me than the plot. But I agree, of those, the future is really strong in Angus's through line. I thought it was really interesting in the Paul Giamatti in the scene in the Paul Giamatti was talking to Angus, or sort of trying to teach Angus, and he was talking about the past versus the present.
Yeah. I missed that.
Oh, I can't answer this right now. So I thought that was intriguing. How you can't really understand the present without knowing the past and knowing your past. And the fact that they paired it that way, I thought was like, okay, that's awfully smart. Most people do the past and the future. That's kind of where they see you got the past and then you got the future, and it's not the way we tend to look at it in Dramatica. So I thought I was like, that's a curious pairing in terms of him making that. But again, it was talking specifically to Angus, about Angus, trying to get Angus to understand the world. And I thought that was, so it was like he was describing Angus's world as opposed to trying to describe his own world. I mean, he was talking about school, but I just thought that was an interesting thematic moment. Um, I'm not getting I'm doing a lot of talking. Is there anybody else talk?
Well,
Just wondering where I was getting a lot of control just in how, at least on how the teacher is acting towards the students, right? He's very regimented, very wants to be very much in control of this chaperoning situation that he's been stuck with. Um,
What are you just trying to describe?
the overall
Story.
I don't know, it would be the problem or the focus or the
Oh, I see.
what have you, but that was coming through strongly to me as well.
Okay, and you're talking about at the element level. Now, if we're looking at here for Paul what's Paul Giamatti's character's name again?
Paul, his name is Paul Hunnam.
Yeah, sorry.
Paul.
Or Hinham or something like that.
Hunnam, yeah.
That's Paul. Okay, that's easy for me to remember.
Yeah.
So Paul, as an innermost desire, where do we see that coming in as his personal through line? I mean, it does pop up pretty much every act. You see him you see how he becomes attracted to Lydia, and she thinks that she's maybe interested in him, and then that gets dashed, and you see him close up, pretty quickly. There's a bunch of talking about, his personal, you know, his does he have desires or sexual desires or that kind of stuff, especially the third act, I think it is, where he's sort of being teased by Angus about it. But also, I think you see it probably most. You've got someone who's holds on at the beginning, is so closed off to what his feelings are and what he really what he wants personally. And then by the end, when he stands up to the parents, and also but he doesn't really, I mean, and also by extension to the headmaster, he's very passionate. He's really speaking his heart there. And you can see him, he's from going from just being a curmudgeon to having far more dimensionality and far more range of motions and expressing his fears and desires as the story goes along. So I think that's where you see a lot of development in Paul over the course of the story. Especially in terms of, I think, denial and closure. It's a lot of denial.
Yeah.
Okay, and then, well, let's pick the future, since that one was a really strong one. You always want to pick the things that you feel most strongly about first. I mean, because everything else will conform, what you feel, and when we get down to the main character at the element level, I mean, we have control and uncontrolled in there. I'm not sure that that's necessarily where he is. So we've got closure, hope, denial, and dream. We're in Paul's, that's the theme area, those four. And the elements within them are going to be the problem, solution, symptom, and response to that symptom in them. So question is, where do we think, what is causing, what's truly causing conflict for Paul? What is that root? What is the thing that is making his life difficult? And maybe part of it would be that he is disliked so much.
That he kind of likes being disliked. He likes being separated from everybody and just
I
being
think
on his own.
I think that has more to do with him having shut down his desires, his emotions. I think that that's why it looks like he likes it. I don't think he really likes it.
Yeah.
It's what he's accustomed to, and that's where you get into that mode where you've got a blind spot and you're comfortable in it and you don't want to touch it because it's very sensitive, and whatever caused it, you don't want to have to deal with that. So I mean, to me,
Closure seems to me like
closure and denial are the two that are the strongest.
yeah. I mean, because there's the incident that happened with he's never gotten closure for how he felt he was wronged.
Right, but where is he? Is he is he bringing it to a close, or is he more denying it, meaning not dealing with it?
He's not dealing with it. Yeah.
Right. So I think it's closure means actually bringing something to an end. Denial is sort of keeping it.
The denial of it is what's causing his problems.
Right. I mean, I think conscience is his problem. Foregoing immediate pleasure or benefit because of future consequences. I mean, my God, that's like he's so tight and is also that's what he teaches. It's like this.
And he gives into the temptation of lying, and that's his change.
Yeah, right. He basically takes the easy way out, but it's an easy way to get what he wants, not the easy way for him personally, but he wants more for Angus to have a chance and to be seen than for him to stay at his job. And so, yeah, he takes the easy way out.
Okay, here's something interesting. Okay, so if you pick conscience as his problem, then symptom and response. The symptom is help, and the response is hinder. And that speaks to the conversation with the headmaster, where it's like you could have helped this, the donor's son, you could have the senator's son, whatever it was, you could have helped them out. And
right, he sees helping out is a problem. Can't help these people, they have everything, and if I help them, that's a problem. So yeah, exactly. That's exactly how he's describing it. So he sees giving anybody aid, especially these privileged kids who have everything, have every opportunity. They don't have everything, but they have every opportunity. That's like a huge problem. That's a source of all problems for him.
Consciously on the surface.
Yeah, he doesn't. Conscious is what's pushing it, but he doesn't see that. He's trying to do what's right, and so that's making him not want to help, because he sees if you give help, that's bad. So you need to be a little more difficult. They got to work for it.
Okay, so control and uncontrolled becomes the symptom response for the overall story and the subjective relationship story, I believe.
Right, and there's your controlled and uncontrolled, which you were talking about, where you were seeing it.
Yeah.
In the overall story and in the influence character, in the influence character, because boy, talk about having a control uncontrolled. Any kind of control put on Angus, and he's just like, completely breaks it down and just becomes, the free spirit running around and jumping on trampolines that he doesn't know, or not, or whatever kind of, they're not.
Okay. Well, then so as a steadfast character, he's sitting on help as a problem that he doesn't necessarily switch over to hinder, but how is help as a steadfast impact character? How is that his problem?
Oh, well, I think all of this constant moving him from one school to they're trying, they're trying to help him. It's couched as help, but it's really not. They're just really trying to, his mother's just trying to, keep him away. But it's all, it's either the we're doing this for you stuff.
I mean, sometimes with teenagers, that, I mean, I see it all the time where people are trying to help this teenager and he's saying, "Don't help me, stop helping me," but I don't really see that so much in the way his character played out. It's like, I think, didn't he say something about being in therapy at some point? But he didn't seem to have a problem having gone to therapy. Um, so it,
Right, but he doesn't, but he's not, he's not, he won't ask Paul, Paul for help directly, personally. Remember, he's trying to, well, he's trying to help his dad. But I think as a steadfast character, this is not a problem for him. This is just what motivates him.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't know if this fits, but like at the end, because the Angus didn't ask him for help to see his dad. Like and even though he thought his dad was dead in the cemetery, I mean, the same issue remains that Angus could have just asked him. He said, "Look, this is my situation. I really need to go to Boston." And what's funny is how the main character changes at the end is by making a choice as if he actually did help him. Like if Angus had come and asked him for help and he said, "Yes, this may get me in trouble, but I'm going to go ahead and help you," that's essentially the same resolution that happened in the end anyway.
Right, but it wouldn't have changed the main character.
Right. But could it be seen as that help is what's in like the drive, the evidence?
Well, you see, okay, here's where you see it. When in the private moments, he seems to want to help. And he talks to the young a kid Park who in the bed next to him, who wets his bed and who's crying. He's very helpful. He wants to help people. But when he's called on, or that in the bigger picture, it doesn't work that way because I think his function is different. But on that, like, he really does want help and he really does like to help others. It's just that not something that he is. It's like when something needs help, it draws him toward it. It's one of those, if that makes any sense. It motivates him. And it's certain kinds of, again, it's certain kinds of things. It's not just in anything. It's much more, I think you see it much more with the other kids. I have to look at it again. So we have the overall story. So the problem is conscience. Okay, again, foregoing immediate pleasure for the benefit or benefit for future consequences because of future consequences. So that's what's creating conflict.
Well, look,
I think that's also why they're I think that's one of the reasons why Paul's character is still there. Because he would much rather be tempted, to 86 him.
But the fact that Angus gave his father a gift, okay, I guess you might be able to interpret that as an act of conscience, but that creates problems because the father then uses it as a weapon, and that made the whole thing erupt um, because Angus was trying to do something nice for his father, and Paul allowed him to do it. He basically supported him in doing that. So that act of conscience created problems in the overall scheme of things.
And you see, I mean, uncontrolled, I think that again, them leaving campus, that's that's part of being uncontrolled. The school wants everything to be really tightly controlled, and he tries, but there's just this fight against him as a teacher in the overall story. And that's where you also get what's her name, drinking and losing control because of her
Mary.
Mary, yeah. Mary's I think it's, I mean, and I really like responsibility as being the issue, because you certainly, I think that's probably the thematics in this are so strong. I think Mary feels responsible for her son. She's spending Christmas there because she wants to, um, uh, it's like, I need to be here for it's too soon for me to leave, even though my sister is pregnant and wants me to go spend Christmas with them. I mean, everybody is just balancing this commitment, this responsibility versus commitment, teeter-totter. You definitely have lots of rationalizations going on. Let's just see what we have. Go back to our story engine and see what we have and don't have. So we still don't have any of the ones that we were having trouble with, which is, I'd say, pretty consistent. Now the goal, thinking of the goal now, it's changing one's nature. And if the goal is to change one's nature that's interesting, because that's a lot different than where I was thinking what the goal might be. But if the goal is changing one's nature, then it doesn't seem to be very successful, because everybody comes back pretty much the same, as they were at the beginning. The only one who's different is really Paul. The parents are still assholes according to the way this is set up. The kids that are assholes are still assholes. The kids that are victims are still victims. Even Angus he's a little more sensitized or aware of other people maybe, but even he's not convinced that that's necessarily the case. So I'm not sure that, again, the outcome, it's not, if it is a success, it's certainly, I don't know what is successful with a goal of changing one's nature. The consequence seems to be very clear: lose your job. And I mean, that one I would say is pretty, if it was a failure story, then that one would be really easy to illustrate. So the consequence of not, making these kids, better, stronger, but whatever it is that they're, supposedly supposed to do, means you're going to lose your job.
You'd think the institution would change if it was a success, but it doesn't.
Right. Everything in it is just, I mean, is supporting the status quo and absolutely not supporting any kind of growth. Whereas, and if that was the case, if it is a failure story, then it would definitely be a failure good. And the reason I would say it would be good is that, and Jim and I were, it was funny because Jim was, I don't know, I'm not sure if Jim had a success bad. I think he did. Maybe it's what it is. I mean, it's definitely bittersweet. There's no question.
Right.
Yeah.
One of the things he was thinking is that at the end you have him starting to drink again. And I said, no, it's like he spits it out. He's using it as mouthwash. It's not drinking and driving. And I thought that was done specifically so you could see him take a big, huge swig of, was it the Crown Royal? Or whatever it was.
Where he swiped from the headmaster.
Yeah, I think that's what it was.
Yeah, I think so.
And then he just spits it out, rather than drinking as he normally would be. And I thought that was definitely change, but also seemed to me that both of them seem to be in a good place. This is like not necessarily good, but better. I think that's a way of thinking of it, is it's sort of like an improvement, but not swell. I don't know though. I think a lot of this director's films tend to try to be ambiguous about the feel of it, just so that it's not so on the nose.
Well,
Like,
Sideways was pretty on the nose, but yeah,
well,
but others.
that was pretty early. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at some of the other choices we've got. So for a unique ability, let's not deal with unique ability right now. Let's look at the influence character unique ability, because this would be Angus's unique ability to affect Paul. So it's openness, delay, or preconception. I could see openness or preconception.
I'd probably pick openness.
Yeah, I would pick openness too, but what's preconception mean in Dramatica? I should probably just pull out.
Basically, well, okay. So preconception, I'll just select it. So it's adhering to a previously held view, unwillingness to reevaluate.
Yeah.
But I think openness also. I mean, that was what I was thinking. Let's just look, see what it says. So it would say that his unique ability would be closure. Paul's unique ability would be closure, which would be to bring it to an end, which would basically, I think, what that would, if that was, if that was the case, I think that would be about the rule breaking. I mean, seems like that, but I'm not sure that that's what it is.
Well, critical flaw of preconception seems pretty good.
That's pretty strong. Yeah, I think that could easily be undermine his ability to. Well, he certainly does have he could make this thing and end up by saying this is all Angus's fault. It was all pretense or whatever, and then that would fall into what everybody was expecting it to be. Even the mother was saying, okay, he pulled a trick on you. What did he do? What pretext did he give you? She knows that he did it. It was just she wanted to, like, an excuse to give in to her husband, so that he can be sent off permanently to the academy. Well, but let's see what else we have here. And it does make him a holistic thinker.
But it gives us failure.
Yeah. So let's look at what else we have. About the benchmarks? For the main character, memories? No, I don't. That doesn't seem right.
But they do crop up toward the end.
Yeah, but you'd have to see these. You'd have to see something all the way through.
I think it's how his less he becomes less seems to become less impulsive as as you go along.
Yeah.
He's less prone to explosion and you know.
Well, this works. The doing as what were the choices? Well, obviously there were all of the
All three of them.
Three of them.
understanding, doing, gathering information. No, it sure seems like it's more of a doing thing in the relationship.
I mean, you see those as signposts. You see learning.
Yeah,
You
no,
see
no,
a certain
no.
amount of understanding, but they're
It's like the doing is the one. The doing gets more. I'd say they get less and less extreme. It goes from being completely uncontrolled to,
they're going to the party together. They're going, well, with Mary, of course, but then they're going to Boston, and they go to the movie. Then they end up going to the sanitarium to get. They're just doing things together, and the fact that they're getting more and more comfortable doing things together, I think kind of is a benchmark there.
yeah, I like I, I like that too. Impulsive responses, I think, does work really well for the main character in terms of him becoming less impulsive
Yeah.
over the course of the story. In the influence character, how things are changing. Um, I think that is. I think for him, things seem to be getting, well, for him personally, he's definitely getting more desperate, but um, it's almost like he gets clearer and clearer how things are going at home with his mom, between his mom and his husband and him, because it's at the very end, it's very clear that there's much less harmony than there appeared to be at the very beginning of the story, where it was just, oh, honey, we're not going to come pick you up, to look at this huge mess that there is. Um, and even his, he's isolated at the beginning. He doesn't have any friends. He's, constant, is fighting everybody. But by the end, he's much more, seems to be a little more uh, in control of himself. I think that works kind of nice.
Actually, the relationship problem solution symptom response that will predict the outcome.
Yeah.
What do we have there? We have
Well, I'm going to think, okay, this for the symptom, it's either control or faith, and it's not faith.
Yeah.
I would pick control, but I absolutely wouldn't pick faith. I mean, control is again, it's all over the place, and that's, especially as the symptom, as being a problem.
Yeah.
So let's just see. Okay,
that would pick success.
that picks success. All right.
Huh.
Hmm.
That's weird.
What? No, I mean, I'm okay with it being a success. I just this
How
Right.
could it be a success though?
It just depends how we define what the goal is.
right. I mean,
Hmm.
I mean, it changes the nature of Barton in so much as he's no longer there.
Hmm? Oh, right. Oh, right. In other words, that we've gotten rid of the last holdover.
Yeah, last holdover is no longer.
Um, that's interesting. Because remember, one of the things that's one of the things that the headmaster was talking about was that's the way it used to be. And, now that I'm a headmaster, I see how things have to be done differently. And the one holdover that is still at the school is causing problems. That's a different way of looking at it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it fits so far, it fits with the choices we've made. It's just sort of what's a different spin on it? But I don't, huh. But I don't think faith is right. Let's just see what it had when we have faith. What else does it give us? Problem pursuit. God, that doesn't sound right.
Problem of conscience, solution of, well, problem.
Well, okay, this is faithless. I'm not thinking of it religiously, but
No, but you have faith that everything will work out? Do you have faith that,
Is,
you know,
can it be
this is
faith in oneself?
well, it can, but it says the area in which Paul and Angus's attention is concentrated as it concerns accepting something as certain without proof.
Oh, he has faith. He has faith in Angus. He develops a faith in Angus. I can see that. Like I think, I mean, it's, you
Well, but
know,
that's not. But this is as the symptom. So this is
oh,
basically saying this is what
does he lack faith in like all the students before then?
no, it's
Okay.
more this is what's causing friction between them. And disbelief is going to be the thing that is the response. Whereas really, truly, trying to do the right thing, the motivation to do what's the right thing instead of, what you want to do is really what's causing the friction. But it's coming up as I'm accepting this as true without any kind of, well, actually, I think that if taken in that kind of context, I think you do see that because every time Paul takes Angus's word for something, it's proven to be false. I mean, it's screwed. So he basically has to be completely skeptical, um, of him. And I mean, we have the conversation at outside the taxi is about that. Um, I think you have when they have to go home after Mary's gotten kind of too drunk, and um, Angus wants to stay because he's met a girl, and Paul's like, yeah, right, okay, it's just gonna get a lot more trouble. It's again this sort of the skeptic. So I could see that the control and uncontrolled stuff work really well elsewhere, um, but let's see, back to the catalyst, the relationship. Actually,
attitude?
any of them would work for me.
Yeah.
Although it seems to be, is it self-interest?
Attitude just what jumps out of those three, I would think.
Except
Uh,
it's I don't think the thing is that they I don't, they, when they're talking and such, they, they're pretty open but, hmm. Well, let me just pick it. Let me just see what. Okay, so that's failure good
Very
action.
good and linear.
Okay,
It kind of gave us what we
what we were,
well, we were split on action decision, but we kind of wanted linear and failure good, yeah.
Mm.
But does everything else fit?
let's see.
Let's put catalyst, unique ability. Okay, main character, unique ability, denial. His issue is denial, and his unique ability is denial.
Right.
Well, I mean,
It's a failure story.
right.
Right.
So it's undermined by his openness. And and his denial is influenced um by Angus's preconceptions. Um well, not his unique ability of denial is not undermined, it's pushed by preconceptions, which, I think that definitely, everybody hates you. The teachers all hate you.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think that definitely prods him. Um, critical flaw of closure. Interesting. Well, that never really truly, that doesn't really fully come to pass. We have the obligation for the overall story catalyst. Okay. And the urge to embrace immediate benefits despite possible consequences.
Well, you're looking at temptation. You're reading temptation,
I
so you
am.
have to
But that's
scroll over
say that
obligation again. Let's see.
there we go. I was
There
gonna
it
say,
is.
sound right?
Or you concerns accepting intent.
Oh, yeah. Okay. I think, let's see, that would be, so the catalyst pops up. Um, I think that's like going to the party,
Well, taking him to the, he
right? Take them
dislocates
to
his
the
arm,
hospital.
take him to the hospital. That's obligation. Um, but
Also going to Boston. I mean, it's
Isn't it okay? This is where I always kind of get lost with Dramatica, but isn't that Mary? I mean, Mary taking the job there is an obligation that it will support a situation that she hopes will lead to a better one.
right, but that's backstory.
Okay.
true,
Mary
true, but she's still part of the overall. It's still overall story.
I heard that part of the discussion definitely describes that kind of obligation. Yes, absolutely. It illustrates it. Yeah. So how it's sort of like this is what it looks like. So yes, I think you're correct. Um, and from a time lock option locks, which isn't really connected here. They say it's 14 days, but do we know? I is it when they show the how many days left? Is that a title card?
Yeah, it's a title card that they just insert every now and then. But
Well, the
still,
signpost.
it's a time lock technique. But um, okay, what I need is obviously, or what we all need is reason not a reason why it's an option lock as opposed to a reason why it's not a time lock. So
Well,
when you talk about in
but if
relationship to the goal of changing one's nature, how are we running out of options and ultimately fail? Uh,
Um, but if they're having, see, because I watched it a long time ago and I watched most of it, but I was also listening to it a lot. So that's why I was asking about if they were cards that said 7 days, 3 days,
Yeah,
1 day.
well, there was, yeah, yes.
Okay, then that would, to me, it would mean that the intent was it was a time lock. Um, and ostensibly, did the mother come in and did that come in on the like at the right at the end of it? Like after the end of the, or was that like much later?
Well, we don't
Well,
know, actually.
we
It's
don't know, but Paul says in the speech, I've got to know your son for these 2 weeks.
Oh, then
So it does
that's
work
a
with
time
what you
lock
did.
then. Yeah, that's time lock.
Okay.
I mean, it's because I was listening again, I was listening to it more than I was watching it. That's the kinds of things you miss when you're not watching it. That little. In fact, I had to go back and watch a couple things. Is like I'm clearly missing something here, and then I went, "Oh, okay, that's what's going on."
But that's interesting because I would have never. I mean, Sandy brings up a great point. I mean, they did literally have the cards and they were ticking down the days, and I
I just
thought
don't
that
think
was it.
it doesn't feel like a time lock to me. There was no time pressure. With a time lock, you feel like
Right.
you're running out of options,
right.
but
But they would be saying things like, Paul would say, we just need to survive these last 5 days without getting into any trouble. And then once
right.
these 5 days are done, if we're not in any trouble, then we've succeeded. But that kind of statement was never made.
Yeah, and that's why I said it because without having seen by listening to it, again, I saw the movie a year ago and I watched most of it. But I've listened to it like a couple times through, and I there was nothing in there that I remember that even indicated it was a time lock from audio. And
Hmm.
that's why I have a hard, and my sense of it is that it wasn't that they weren't running out of time. They never felt like they were being rushed. It's like, okay, we're gonna go on this field trip. Oh, we'll drop you off. Okay, we're gonna go do this. We're gonna do that. Oh, we're gonna pick you up. Now we're gonna come back. There was just no sense of time drive.
Yeah.
It just had more to do with, how far can the student push the teacher
Hmm.
before the teacher blows up or it all goes to hell. And and it got to that point where it seemed like everything was, in fact, everything seemed to get to be a really good place until it fell apart. Because what really was happening is that the teacher was changing more toward the student rather than the student changing more toward the teacher. And that's why the teacher ends up falling on a sword and getting fired. Um, so I personally, I mean, because the intent was a time lock, clearly, but I don't think that's actually how it was written.
And that's always been my question is if the writer's not using Dramatica to write the story and he's relying on his intuition, I mean, isn't there just some ambiguity there that sometimes people's intuition kind of fails them?
Sure, sure. We all have blind spots. I mean, we all will see certain things really clearly, and other things we just can't see.
Because those time cards were so unnecessary. Like they really kind of confused me because it felt so off when they were saying 2 days into it, 6 days into it. It was like setting up something that never really, the story didn't
Right.
feel like it was going to pay off on.
Right.
Honestly, there were a lot of setups that weren't paid off, like the girlfriend at the party. She kissed him, and then it's like, okay, what happened to that? So there were some dangling threads, and I did feel and I think because of that lack of time lock, option lock structure, uh, the movie that it did feel like it meandered. There were long sections when I felt like the movie was just kind of meandering.
Well,
That's
and that's what happens when you don't have a limit, a strong limit.
Mm.
There's nothing pushing it or pulling it.
a well-defined limit. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that is what the limit does, is it pushes the story along or it pulls it along and it tells the audience when the damn thing's going to be over.
There were so many scenes where it's just like, we're just gonna let this play. We're just gonna sit with these characters for a while, longer than was necessary.
Yeah, but you can have that and yet have the whole the whole work still be moving toward a climax.
Right.
Because that's what the limit does, is it basically forces you toward the climax as opposed to just going on and on and on and on and on.
You have to give the audience, right? You have to give the audience an intuition of how this is going to end so that there's a tension between their inner guests and how the story works out. When they don't have a clear intuition, that you get that sense of, just like you said, just meandering or just kind of a loss because there's no, yeah, wow, that's,
But I agree. I mean, time lock, option lock is a plot device, and I do feel like plot wise it was a little wobbly because this was so strongly character based. It was a character study. It was about the characters, and so the plot was a little, um, uh, you
It's
know, not as tight as it could have been.
Sandy, I have to disagree with you. It is not a plot device. It is
Mm.
as it is a necessary way to communicate to your audience that this is a finite work that is working toward an end. So that they know, oh, this is not going to just go. So how far along am I? I don't know. Well, I mean, if you're in a time lock, well, you know when the end will be, and you can figure out where you are toward that. If you're in option lock, you have a sense of how many options there might be, and that how many have we gone through? Well, we're running out of options,
Well,
right?
when I say plot, I mean a plot dynamic is really what I mean, because that's
Yeah.
the category it's under.
But it's, I mean, and when you don't have one, see, you can have one without really realizing it. And that's why I think I think this is one of the reasons why we also have a hard time nailing down the goal, because the climax is what was where you determine whether or not the goal is reached. And if you don't have a climax, then it's really hard to say what the, okay, was this the goal? And is this, how did it fall out? And I think that's part of where we feel the end of this, because, with the parent, with Angus's parents popping up at the end there, it seems from the overall story, it seems arbitrary. I mean, it's logically correct, emotionally disconnected. It's like, okay, we have to have a reason for this scene for our main character, for him to go through this choice. But it doesn't feel like it was set up to happen. It seems like, oh, we could have just not had that scene and had a conflict between him and then headmaster, and that would have satisfied it, whatever, and or anything. It just seemed like it was kind of a little arbitrary for me, and I think it's just because we really didn't know, there wasn't a strong push forward toward a climax. So it's just like, oh well, we have to have a climax, so here it is. And I thought one other thing I wanted to mention, I thought there were quite a few, well, there were a couple you and I are alike scenes in it that were, I thought, pretty interesting. The best one was about the Adderall or whatever it was.
right, the liberal.
Yeah, it's like,
yeah.
Librium.
yeah, the Librium. Yeah, I thought it was like, oh, that's a perfect you and I are just alike scene.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
there
that
was
was-
something
that
that
was
was
really
spoken.
good.
What?
There was one conversation where
Yeah.
Darianne and I looked at each other, go, "That's the you and I are just alike conversation."
Right. There was an earlier one where they were talking. It was like, okay, that's that early on in the story where it's like, okay, this is the you and I are just alike scene. And then of course, that's why I thought when they had the Adderall, whatever it is, Librium one, where where Angus is denying what it is, but it's taking Librium, whereas Paul is like, yep, it's Librium, you know. So they're the same, but they're also dealing with it in a different way. I just thought that was I thought that was it worked really well to again cement that you and I relationship between the main character and an influence character. So I think we're not the same. We have a similar but dissimilar story form from one that I think Jim had come up with. But I think there's an awful lot of in ours, awful lot of, well, I think it's kind of like maybe this, but you know, I'm glad we came up with our own. Not necessarily, this is like 95% the same though, I think. I don't remember.
Were you in the motivation, you know, the obtaining, subconscious, becoming?
Yeah, I think we're at the element level, you know, the problem solution. I think those are all the same. And the domains are the same. So it's more in the stuff that we were having a hard time with.
Right.
So that to me, that just means that it's an area that's not as, you know, clear in the storytelling, or maybe in in our ability to interpret the story. But that's, you know, that's fine because you get enough, you know, that's one thing. Certain stories really kind of emphasize some stuff and not others, and I think this definitely emphasized character over plot. So I think the character stuff was pretty clear, and the plot stuff was like,
Right.
a little more of this. It's like much more evenly balanced, so it's not quite so it's this or that. Maybe by design, maybe not, but it doesn't matter. But the character stuff is very, very, I think, very clear. Any other questions on this?
No.
I think next month we're doing Wild Robot, and I believe it's like on Netflix before we actually have.
I think what we just saw that was it on Hulu or Disney
Peacock, I
Plus?
think.
Peacock, maybe.
But
Peacock,
I think it goes wide toward the middle of next month. So I believe so. So
okay.
That one should be interesting because it seems like I don't know, it seems like there's something wonky with the story in some way.
Toward the end, there was something wonky toward the end. I felt I'd have to see it again, but I feel like the ending, well, we'll talk about it. That there's something tacked on about the ending. That's all. So
all right.
But you know, still touching story.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen it, so I look forward to it. And it may be challenging, but hey, you know, we've done so many of these things that
Well, that's what always brings me the faith in Dramatica is you get to this point, and this happened a lot with Jim, where it's like, oh, it doesn't seem to work. It doesn't seem to work. And then somehow it just falls into place and it explains so much. And it even explains what the story, like in this case, what maybe was a little bit very fuzzy for the writer, just on an intuitive level, what doesn't quite, connect or complete.
Right. I remember,
yeah.
My one big example of the unintended consequences of not knowing time lock and option lock, you know, your limit, was when I saw AI. It's kind of amusing that that's saying that.
Oh, you guys heading out? Oh,
Well, Johnny
Well,
just,
Johnny said he was
you're
going.
talking about AI, how, yeah.
all right, because I was watching the movie. It's like, okay, this is fun. It's like it's metal's a little messy, but and then suddenly it felt like it ended, but then it kept on going.
Mhm.
Like, wait, okay, and then it keeps on going for another half hour, and then it feels
Mhm.
like it ends again. It's like, what's going on with that? So I remember looking at it. It's like, oh, yeah, and it's because of the two different authors. You
Mhm.
know, it was originally written, uh, adapted rather by Kubrick, and then it was picked up by Spielberg. And Kubrick has always been interested in Geppetto, whereas Spielberg has always been interested in Pinocchio. And so the Geppetto story is, you know, the scientist makes the doll, sends it out into the world, and the doll comes back, and that's the end of that story. And that was when I felt like the first one ended, was when he came back and the scientist goes, "Oh, goody, let me go tell everybody else," and the boy sort of kills himself, tries to. But then the other story is the Pinocchio story, which starts when she speaks the magic words that brings him to life, like the blue fairy, and then ultimately ends when the real blue fairy, you know, the AI is looking like the blue fairy, and he has his um day with mother, and then he falls asleep and he dreams because he's a real boy because only real boys dream. It's like, oh, that's the Pinocchio story, but neither of them had the limits in there. So, but they were baked in, and without realizing what's going on, that's why the middle is a mess because there are two different stories trying to be told, and they're fighting for space and control of the narrative.
Mhm.
But you may not know that as an author, but it's part of what makes a story, and we intuitively, you know, build it into our stories, or in this case, build into different ones because we had two different authors with two different approaches.
And sensibilities,
Yeah,
yeah.
no, I felt like tonight I really understood. Like that's one thing I definitely understand now is the difference between an option lock and or the importance of what it means for you as an author, because I think it's like a contract that you have with the audience. And it's also, I think, like you know, well, it you know, because I've often wondered what makes a story a story. Like, I mean, of course, Dramatica answers that, but philosophically, like, how do you know a story's ended? Like, how does it have that? And I think on a in like like an experiential level, it's the lock. The lock tells you that okay, this is what, because all stories start in the middle of some other bigger fractal reality, right? And so how do you define this as a self-contained little segment that
Right.
then contains all this meaning? It's the lock,
Yeah, it's the limit. It basically gives you
the limit, right?
yeah, the edges of the story. Yep, that's exactly correct.
Mhm.
And then it sets up, I really believe, I think now I can really see how it sets up for someone an intuitive, like they don't know because as a reader, as an audience, they're not consciously aware of whether it's a time lock or an option lock. They're not thinking that level, but they are picking up on it. And then they know where the story, so they're always, because part of what seems to communicate with us the stories is we're always guessing where it's going to go next. And so having those guesses subverted, and you know that's what creates the interest and the tension. But if you don't have that baseline, if you don't have that common agreement between the author and the audience, then you don't have a way to really control and have that tension. So
Mm.
from a writer's point of view, like that was a huge insight. That
Oh,
was
good.
terrific.
Great. Well, I always love it when that happens, you know, when especially when those the parts of the story, parts of narrative you go, I just don't get why we need that, you know. And then just like,
Mhm.
oh, that's
Mhm.
why. Okay, now it makes sense. All
The
righty.
limit helps forces the writer to take on some discipline. I mean, a writer needs to be disciplined. and not go off on tangents or not dwell too long on, you know, and so the lock helps enforce some of that discipline that you know, that an audience appreciates.
Right. And it could be rigid or it could be really loose. And, you know, that's completely, you know, that's your.
But it also helps you engage in those tangents a little bit too, because the audience can be a little bit, if they have a really strong intuitive sense of the story building tension, because it's either running out of time or running out of options, they, you know, those little tangents don't seem so bothersome because you're not like, oh, where's this going?
Right.
Right.
Exactly.
You know you're going to get back to the main plot
Right.
before long. Yeah.
Yep. That's exactly right.
Discipline.
All righty. Well,
all right.
Great.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris.
Have a great evening.
Nice to meet you, Craig. Take care.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Craig.
Bye-bye.